rifles and cannon, but something far older and far stranger. 150 million years ago, this dry American West was a steaming, green, river-soaked land where the largest animals that have ever lived ate, fought, bled, and died. Where a single hot afternoon could decide whether a creature the size of a freight train lived to see another sunrise or ended up as somebody's supper. We call this lost world the Late Jurassic. And make no mistake, friend, it was not a peaceful place. It was a brutal, grinding daily war for survival, fought on a scale we can barely picture today. Animals weighing more than 30 pickup trucks. Predators with mouths that opened wide enough to swallow a man whole. Tails that swung with the force of a wrecking ball and spikes longer than your forearm. For most of human history, all of this lay hidden under our feet, silent, waiting. Nobody had the faintest idea. Then, a little over a century ago, the bones started coming out of the ground by the wagon load. And what they told us was a story of blood and bone, of giants and killers, of a world that ran on one simple, savage rule: eat or be eaten. So pour yourself a cup of coffee and settle into your chair, because over the next half hour, we are going to bring that vanished war back to life, piece by piece. And by the time we are done, I promise you will never look at a quiet stretch of desert the same way again. This is the story of the most dangerous neighborhood that has ever existed on the face of this planet. A place where the rent was paid in blood, where the strong fed on the weak, and where every sunrise was a fresh roll of the dice. So let's go back. Let's go back 150 million years to a time before man, before the mountains we know, before almost everything. And let's see what was really happening out there in the green and the heat. First, let's set the stage. Because the Earth 150 million years ago was not the Earth you know, not even close. If you could climb into a time machine and step out into the Late Jurassic, the very first thing you would notice is the air. It would feel thick, warm, heavy and wet, like a greenhouse on an August afternoon down south. There were no polar ice caps anywhere on the planet, not one. From the top of the world to the bottom, the Earth was warm, damp, and green. A man would be sweating through his shirt before he took 10 steps. The map would look all wrong, too. The familiar continents you learned in school had not yet pulled apart. North America, Europe, Africa, and South America were all still crowded together, slowly tearing loose from one enormous supercontinent like a great raft breaking up. Shallow seas crept in and out across the low country. Broad, lazy rivers wandered across enormous floodplains, and during the wet season they overflowed their banks and drowned the lowlands for miles. Then came the dry season, and this is where the trouble started. When the rain stopped, the water pulled back. The rivers shrank to muddy channels, and the watering holes dried down to a few precious pools. Suddenly, every thirsty animal for miles around was forced into the same small patch of ground. Predator and prey, shoulder to shoulder, all of them desperate for the same water. You do not need a science degree to know what that leads to. That is a recipe for violence. Now, look around at the land itself. There is not a single blade of grass anywhere you turn. Grass had not even been invented yet, if you can believe it. Instead, the ground was carpeted in ferns, horsetails, and low, scrubby plants. And towering over all of it stood great forests of conifers, cycads, and strange palm-like trees, some of them giants, reaching more than 100 feet into that hazy, humid sky. And feeding on all that greenery were animals so large that if one walked down your street today, its back would clear the rooftops and its footstep would set the dishes rattling in your cupboard. This was their kingdom, every acre of it. And every last one of them, from the smallest to the largest, was caught up in the same endless struggle. The struggle to find enough food, enough water, and a way to keep from being killed. There were no rangers, no fences, no rules of any kind. There was only the land, the heat, the water, and the constant gnawing question of who was going to eat whom before the day was out. Welcome to the Jurassic. Mind where you put your feet. Let's start with the giants. Because in this world, the giants were almost beyond belief. They were called sauropods. You would know them by their shape, even if you had never heard the name in your life. A small head, a neck like a construction crane, a body like a barn, and a long tail trailing out behind like a whip. These were the great long-necked dinosaurs, the gentle-faced colossi, and the Late Jurassic was their golden age. There has never been anything like them before or since. Picture Brachiosaurus. This animal stood with its shoulders higher than a two-story house, and it carried its neck up high, so its head looked out over the treetops at around 40 feet off the ground. That is taller than a telephone pole. It tipped the scales somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 tons. Let that sink in. That is heavier than a fully loaded cement truck, walking around on 4 pillar-like legs, reaching up to strip the tops of trees no other animal on Earth could touch. Then there was Diplodocus, a different design entirely. Stretched out from nose to tail tip, this animal ran close to 90 feet long, longer than 3 school buses parked end to end. But here is the trick of it. Most of that enormous length was neck and tail, light and hollow-boned, so the whole animal weighed far less than you would guess. The tail alone was a marvel of engineering, tapering down to a thin, delicate tip like the end of a bullwhip. And some scientists believe Diplodocus could snap that tail through the air fast enough to crack like a rifle shot, a thunderclap warning to any predator that came sniffing around too close. And understand, these were not rare freaks or one-of-a-kind monsters. The late Jurassic floodplains were crawling with them in great herds. There was Apatosaurus, the heavy-built bruiser your grandfather knew by the name Brontosaurus. There was Camarasaurus, the common workhorse of the river valleys, found by the hundreds. There was Barosaurus, with a neck so absurdly long that pumping blood all the way up to its brain would have demanded a heart of staggering power, the most powerful pump nature ever built. Now, why on earth did they get so big? It comes down to one word: defense. When you weigh 30 tons, almost nothing that walks can bring you down. A full-grown sauropod was a walking fortress, a living mountain of muscle and bone. To kill one, a predator had to be patient, clever, and willing to risk its own life. Most of the time, the giants won the war simply by being too big to die. But here is the cruel truth of the Jurassic, the part the picture books leave out. The giants did not start out big. Every single one of them began life as a hatchling, no larger than a house cat, breaking out of an egg about the size of a football. And for those first vulnerable years, before they grew into living fortresses, they were nothing more than walking meals. The young were hunted relentlessly, day and night. Out of 100 hatchlings, only a tiny handful would ever live long enough to become a giant. The rest of them fed the war. Not every plant eater chose to fight back by simply getting enormous. Some of them got armored instead. And the most famous of all of them is an animal you would recognize anywhere on Earth, even if you have not thought about it since you were a boy. Stegosaurus. If the sauropods were the skyscrapers of the Jurassic, then Stegosaurus was the battle tank. About the size of a large bus, weighing in around 5 tons. It walked low and heavy on stocky legs, head held down near the dirt where the soft, low plants grew. It was no genius, this animal, and it did not need to be. But it is the 2 features on its back and tail that turned it into a legend. First, those plates. Running in 2 staggered rows down its spine were huge flat plates of bone, some of them standing more than 2 feet tall. For the better part of 100 years, scientists argued about what in the world they were for. A shield against attack? Probably not. They were too thin, and they stood up in the wrong place to guard against a bite to the flanks or the belly. Today, most experts believe those plates were partly for show, to make the animal look bigger and meaner than it really was, and partly to help control its body temperature, soaking up the warmth of the morning sun or shedding heat in the afternoon. Some even suspect the plates could flush with blood and turn a vivid color, lighting up like a warning sign to rivals and enemies alike. But the real business end of the Stegosaurus was at the other end. The tail. At the very tip of it sat 4 wicked spikes, each one up to 3 feet long, jutting out sideways and back. Scientists gave this fearsome weapon a nickname, and believe it or not, the name stuck. They call it the Thagomizer, and it was no decoration, friend. We have actually found the proof right out of the Wyoming dirt. There is a predator's tailbone with a hole punched clean through it, a hole that matches the spike of a Stegosaurus exactly. Think hard about that for a moment. 150 million years later, we can still see the precise instant a Stegosaurus swung that tail and drove a spike straight through its attacker. So picture the scene. A predator closes in, licking its chops, expecting an easy supper. The Stegosaurus turns, plants its front feet, and whips that spiked tail around in a low, brutal, sweeping arc. One solid connection, and a 1,000-pound hunter goes down screaming with a shattered leg or a punctured gut. In the Jurassic, even the slow, dim-witted plant eaters could kill you stone dead. There were no easy targets out here. Nobody, predator or prey, ever got a truly free meal. Now we come to the animal that ruled this entire world by sheer fear. The undisputed king of the late Jurassic battlefield. Ladies and gentlemen, meet Allosaurus. Now forget, just for a moment, about Tyrannosaurus Rex. I know, T-Rex gets all the glory. But that famous monster would not stomp onto the scene for another 85 million years, long after everything we are talking about today was dead, buried, and turned to stone. The Jurassic had its own apex predator, its own crowned king of killers, and in his day, he was every bit as terrifying as anything that came after. Allosaurus? Let's take a good, long look at him. This was a hunter built on the classic predator design. He walked upright on two powerful piston-like legs, balanced out behind by a long, stiff tail with two muscular arms held ready out front. The big, full-grown Allosaurus, stretched around 30 feet from nose to tail, stood up to 10 feet tall at the hip and weighed in at 2 to 3 tons. That, my friend, is the size of a large pickup truck that has decided it wants to eat you. But it is the weapons that truly set Allosaurus apart from the pack. Start with those arms. Unlike the famous, useless little arms of T-Rex that everybody loves to laugh about, the arms of Allosaurus were long, strong, and tipped with 3 wickedly curved claws, like meat hooks, each one up to 6 inches long. These were not for show. They were grappling hooks built for grabbing, holding fast, and tearing flesh. Then there is the skull. Allosaurus carried a relatively light, narrow head, and that mouth was lined with dozens of teeth shaped like steak knives, curved backward and serrated along the edges like a saw blade, perfect for slicing meat. But here is the fascinating part, the part that surprises everyone. Allosaurus did not have the tremendous, bone-crushing bite of the later monsters. Pound for pound, its bite was actually fairly weak. So how in the world did it kill animals many times its own size? Scientists have a chilling theory, and the skull itself backs it up. They believe Allosaurus used its head like a hatchet. It would open that mouth astonishingly wide, far wider than you would ever expect, and then swing the whole upper jaw downward like a man swinging an axe, driving those serrated teeth deep into the flesh of its victim, then ripping back hard to tear out a chunk the size of a dinner platter. Strike, tear, retreat. Strike, tear, retreat. It did not need to win the fight in a single bite. It just had to keep slashing, opening wound after bloody wound, until its giant prey weakened and bled out. Patient, relentless, a slow death by 1,000 cuts. This was the lion of the Jurassic. And just like a lion, Allosaurus may well have hunted in packs, ganging up to bring down prey far too large for any single hunter to tackle alone. Now picture that. 3 or 4 of these things, working together, circling a wounded sauropod with cold, calculating eyes. That was the living nightmare every plant eater in this world woke up to every single day of its life. Here is something most folks never realize. Allosaurus may have worn the crown, but he most certainly did not rule alone. The late Jurassic was absolutely packed with predators, and every last one of them was competing for the same scarce meat. Imagine a single African watering hole today, but instead of one kind of lion, you have got 3 or 4 completely different kinds of big cats, all snarling and fighting over the very same prey. That, in a nutshell, was the Jurassic. Take Ceratosaurus. He was slightly smaller than Allosaurus, but believe me, you would not want to meet him on a dark night. This one wore a strange blade-like horn right on the end of his snout and a row of bony armored studs running down his back. He had unusually long, deep teeth, real fangs, and many scientists now think he made his living down in the rivers and swamps, hunting in the water where the bigger Allosaurus did not care to go. Different territory, different prey, but the same deadly line of work. Then there was the true heavyweight of the bunch, Torvosaurus. Now this is the one that ought to keep you up at night. Torvosaurus may have been even bigger than Allosaurus, possibly one of the very largest meat-eaters of its entire age, stretching well past 30 feet, with a massive, deep skull and teeth like a row of curved daggers. Where Allosaurus was a slasher, working his prey with quick-cutting strikes, Torvosaurus was a brute, a bruiser, built to overpower and crush. When these two crossed paths over a fresh carcass, it would have been a tense standoff of titans, all snarls, bared teeth and bluff, with the very real risk of a brawl that could cripple them both for life. And then, down at the smaller end of the scale, you had the fast ones. The lean, lightly built, quick-footed hunters that could run down anything smaller than themselves and snatch up the young, the sick, the old, and the careless before they ever knew what hit them. So picture the whole brutal pecking order of this world. The fast little killers take the small game. The mid-sized hunters like Ceratosaurus work the rivers and the swampy edges. And the giants, Allosaurus and mighty Torvosaurus, go after the truly massive prey on the days they dare to try. Every single meal was contested. Every kill drew a hungry, dangerous crowd. And every crowd was an argument just waiting to turn violent. In this world, understand, even the crowned kings and the heavyweight champions, the killers themselves, were never, ever safe. A hunter that won the fight but lost the use of a leg had simply traded a quick death for a slow one. Out here, victory and disaster often wore the very same face. Now let me tell you about the single most famous matchup in the entire history of life on dry land. The fight that, more than any other single thing, defines the brutal survival war of the Jurassic. Allosaurus versus Stegosaurus. The lion against the tank. And here is the remarkable thing. We are not just guessing about this one. The bones themselves tell us the story. Remember that predator tailbone with the spike hole punched clean through it? That was an Allosaurus, stabbed by the tail of a Stegosaurus. And we have found the encounter from the other side too. We have a Stegosaurus neck plate with a chunk bitten clean out of it, a bite that matches the jaws of an Allosaurus perfectly. These two great animals fought again and again across millions of years. We have the very scars to prove it. So let's reconstruct one of those fights, slow and careful, moment by moment. Picture a hot, still dry afternoon at the shrinking edge of a river. A lone Stegosaurus is feeding, head down, plates catching the slanting light. It is slow. It is half deaf to the world around it. And it is exactly the kind of target a hungry Allosaurus has been hoping to find all day. The predator approaches low and quiet, using the brush and the riverbank scrub for cover. He is fast, yes, but he is also smart enough to respect the danger in front of him. He has seen with his own eyes what that tail can do. Maybe he is carrying an old aching scar of his own from the last time he got careless. So he does not simply charge in like a fool. He circles, slow and patient, looking for the right angle, trying to work his way around the soft, unprotected flanks and well away from that deadly spiked tail. But the Stegosaurus knows he is there, and it does the one thing that has kept its kind alive for millions of years. It pivots. It keeps its dangerous rear end pointed at the threat at all times, swinging that thagomizer in slow, deliberate, warning arcs. Front end to the food, back end to the enemy. And so the two animals begin a deadly, deliberate dance. The killer trying every trick to get around behind, the tank turning, always turning, keeping those 3-foot spikes squarely between itself and a violent death. Then the Allosaurus commits. He lunges hard for the flank. And the Stegosaurus, with every ounce of muscle it possesses, whips that great tail around. If it connects flush, the fight is over before it ever truly began. A direct, solid hit could shatter the predator's leg like dry kindling, or punch a spike deep into his body, leaving him to die a slow, agonizing death from infection over the days that follow. And we know for a fact this happened, because we have dug up those exact wounds with our own hands. But if the Allosaurus times his move just right, if he ducks under the swing, or takes the blow on a less vital part and presses in anyway through the pain, then he gets those serrated jaws onto that vulnerable flank at last. He bites, tears, and backs off. Bites, tears, and backs off. He opens the wounds, then waits with terrible patience. And slowly, drop by drop, the great armored tank begins to bleed out. There is no referee out here on this floodplain. No bell to end the round, no mercy, no second chances. One of these animals is going to die in the mud, and the other may well limp away, carrying wounds it will never fully recover from. That was the Jurassic in a nutshell. Even when you won, you might still lose everything. And this single fight, predator against tank, played out thousands upon thousands of times across the long millions of years, written forever into the very bones we dig out of the ground today. So far, we have kept our feet planted firmly on the ground. You'd understand, the War of the Jurassic was not fought on land alone. It raged in the skies high above, and it raged down in the dark, cold water below. There was nowhere to hide. Look up first. Wheeling and gliding over those ancient floodplains were the pterosaurs, the flying reptiles. Now, these were not birds, mind you, and that is an important thing to get straight. Birds were only just barely beginning back then, in the form of a famous little creature called Archaeopteryx, a feathered animal about the size of a crow that may well have been one of the very first creatures ever to take to the air on wings made of true feathers. A genuine missing link caught in the rock. But the true masters of the Jurassic sky were the pterosaurs, leathery winged hunters that rode the air currents on wings of skin and snatched fish and small prey from the land and the water below. Some of them were small enough to perch on your arm. Others spread their wings wide enough to make a grown man take a nervous step backward. They were the watchful eyes in the sky, soaring high over the whole bloody battlefield. Now look down into the water. Because if you think the land was a dangerous place, the seas and rivers of the Jurassic were a genuine horror show all their own. The oceans of that age absolutely teemed with monsters. There were the ichthyosaurs, sleek and streamlined and shaped almost exactly like our modern dolphins, with enormous eyes built for hunting in the deep, cold dark. There were the plesiosaurs with their impossibly long necks and 4 great paddle-shaped limbs, gliding silently through the water like something straight out of a sailor's worst nightmare. In fact, these are the very animals that inspired all those old legends of sea serpents and even the tales of the Loch Ness monster you grew up hearing. And there were the true sea dragons, the great marine crocodile relatives and the massive predatory hunters, their jaws bristling with rows of teeth, animals that ruled the deep water the same way Allosaurus ruled the dry shore. A creature that wandered too far out into the shallows for a drink, or a fresh carcass that washed down into the river, would not last very long at all in that company. The water was simply another front in the same endless, merciless war. Above your head, below your feet, and all around you, in the world of the Jurassic, there was nowhere at all that was ever truly safe. Not in the trees, not in the open, not in the deepest water. The war was everywhere, all the time, and it never once stopped to rest. Now then, with all these giants and killers stomping and snarling around the landscape, you might naturally figure there was no room left for anything small and soft to survive. But here is one of the great surprises of the Jurassic, and one of the most important things I will tell you today. Down in the shadows of the giants, scurrying quietly through the ferns and hiding in burrows in the dirt, lived the little ones. And among those little ones were the distant ancestors of you and me. The early mammals of the Jurassic were tiny things. Most of them were no bigger than a mouse or a rat. They came out mostly at night, under cover of darkness, when the great predators were resting and the world grew quiet. And they survived generation after generation by being small, quick, and clever, eating insects and seeds and grubs, and above all, by staying out of sight. For 150 million long years, our ancestors lived exactly this way, hidden in the cracks and shadows of a world ruled by giant reptiles, just waiting for their moment. It does not look like much, does it? A frightened, little furry creature, no bigger than your hand, hiding in the dark from the giants overhead. But I am telling you, never, ever underestimate the meek. Because while the giants ruled the daylight world by brute strength and terror, those tiny, humble mammals were quietly developing the very things that would one day inherit the whole earth. Warm blood to stay active in the cool of the night. Fur to hold in that warmth. Bigger, sharper brains for their size. And the deep, hard-won instinct of the true survivor. The one who lives not by being the biggest or the strongest, but by being the smartest, the quickest, and the most adaptable. There is a powerful lesson buried in that old bone bed for every one of us. In the long run, over the great sweep of time, it was not the biggest or the most fearsome creature that won the war. It was the patient little ones who simply learned to endure. The giants ruled the Jurassic with an iron fist. But the future, as it turned out, belonged to the humble survivors hiding quietly at their feet. Remember that? The next time somebody tells you that bigger is always better. So what in the world finally happened to all of it? To the giants, the killers, the armored tanks, the whole brutal, magnificent kingdom we have walked through today. Where on earth did the Great War finally go? The simple answer is that no world lasts forever, not even one this powerful and this strong. As the Jurassic slowly gave way to the age that came after it, the land itself was steadily changing underfoot. The great supercontinent kept right on breaking apart, piece by piece. Seas rose and fell across the centuries. The climate shifted and turned.